You already know what you need to do. That's the part no one ever talks about. It's not that you lack information. It's not that you haven't studied enough or watched enough content. Deep down in that quiet place you rarely visit, the place you only reach in the still hours of the night, when the noise of the world finally falls away, you already know. And that knowing, that gap between what you understand and what you actually do, is where your entire life is being decided right now. Stop for a moment. Think about the last time you told yourself, "I'll start Monday." Think about the version of yourself you keep promising to become. Think about the dreams you've quietly shelved because life got loud and the noise felt more real than the vision. Think about the goals you set at the beginning of the year that you've barely thought about since. That's not laziness. That's not weakness. That's not some fatal character flaw written into your DNA. That's a missing framework. And that's precisely what this is about. What you're about to hear isn't motivation that fades by Thursday. It isn't inspiration designed to spike your emotions for 48 hours before dissolving back into the ordinary. These are 20 lessons, hard-won, science-backed, and deeply human, that once they land inside you, they don't leave. They rewire how you think, how you choose, and who you become. Most people will hear a few of these and nod along. Don't be that person. Absorb every single one like it was written specifically for you, for this moment in your life, for exactly where you are right now. Because it was. Chapter 1. The Power of Choosing Later over Now. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you chose the harder thing? Not because someone was watching, not because you were obligated to, not because failure would embarrass you in front of others, but because you genuinely understood what it would cost you not to. That moment of choosing, that precise instant where comfort is available and you walk past it anyway, is where everything begins. There's a principle that quietly separates people who construct lives they're proud of from people who spend years wondering why nothing seems to shift. It's not intelligence. It's not connections. It's not even hard work in the conventional sense. It's the ability to look at something you want right now, comfort, pleasure, ease, the path of least resistance, and consciously decide to wait. To choose the future self over the present one. Psychologists call it delayed gratification, but I want you to think of it differently. Think of it as casting a vote for your future self. Every single day you walk into a voting booth. Every single day the choices you make are votes for or against the person you're trying to become. Every time you skip the workout, you cast a vote against that person. Every time you stay up scrolling instead of sleeping, you cast a vote against your energy, your clarity, your next day. But every time you do the demanding thing when the easy thing is right there in front of you, every time you choose long-term over short-term, you're voting for someone worth becoming. In the 1960s, a team of researchers at a university conducted a study that would end up referenced in nearly every serious conversation about human achievement. They sat children down, one at a time, and placed a single sweet treat in front of them. The arrangement was straightforward. Eat it now or wait 15 minutes and receive 2. Then they walked out of the room. What happened next was fascinating, not because of what the children did with the treat, but because of how they managed the weight. Some grabbed it immediately. Some stared at it, agonized, and eventually gave in. But the children who ultimately received the second treat didn't simply have more willpower. They had strategies. They covered their eyes. They sang to themselves. They turned their chair away from the table. They invented games to make the time pass. They weren't fighting desire. They were redirecting attention. That's the real lesson. Delayed gratification isn't a battle of willpower. It's a battle of focus. Your brain has two powerful systems operating simultaneously. One is ancient, fast, and emotional. It wants relief, reward, and pleasure immediately, right now, not later. The other is slower, rational, and forward-thinking. It understands consequences,
timelines, and trade-offs. It can hold a vision of the future and weigh it against the pull of the present. The ancient part is loud. The rational part demands effort to hear. Most people live almost entirely on autopilot from the first system. They purchase things that give them a temporary surge of excitement. They avoid conversations that might be uncomfortable. They eat what tastes good rather than what sustains them. They choose the nap over the work, the scroll over the book, the familiar over the challenging. And then they look up after 5 or 10 years and feel a creeping sense that life somehow slipped past them. Here's what I want you to try this week. Not this year, not someday, this week. When you're about to make an impulsive decision, any decision, pause and ask yourself 3 questions. How will I feel about this in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this in 10 months? How will I feel about this in 10 years? That's it. 3 questions. 10, 10, 10. This tiny pause does something remarkable. It activates the rational part of your brain. It creates just enough space between impulse and action for you to make a choice you'll actually respect yourself for later. It breaks the automatic pilot and puts you back in the driver's seat. And here's something most people overlook about delayed gratification. It gets easier with practice. Not easier in the sense that desire vanishes, but easier in the sense that your brain literally rewires itself. Every time you choose the long-term benefit, you're reinforcing a neural pathway. You're building a self-image as someone who follows through, someone who keeps promises to themselves. And that self-image starts doing the heavy lifting for you. The people who seem to have extraordinary discipline aren't fighting bigger battles than you. They've simply had more practice. And somewhere along the way, they fell in love with who they were becoming. And that love became a force stronger than any impulse. The question isn't whether you can delay gratification. You've done it before. You've waited for something you genuinely wanted. You've pushed through discomfort. You have the capacity. The question is whether you'll choose to use it today, not someday. Because the version of you that's possible, the one with the energy, the clarity, the follow-through, the life you can actually be proud of, isn't waiting for a perfect moment. That version is constructed one small decision at a time, starting with the very next one you make. Chapter 2. Master Your Inner Voice. Here's something that might make you uncomfortable. Right now, As you listen to this, there's a voice in your head. You can sense it. It's running even as these words reach you. It's the same voice that determined this morning whether today was going to feel like an opportunity or a burden. It's the voice that whispered, "You're not ready," the last time a real chance appeared. It's the voice that replays conversations from 3 years ago at 2 in the morning, rehearsing what you should have said, building cases you'll never present. That voice is not your enemy. But if you've never learned to guide it, it's probably been quietly steering and often derailing your life without you ever realizing it. Here's the number that shifts everything. Researchers estimate that you have somewhere between 12,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day. The staggering part, for most people, the overwhelming majority of those thoughts are both repetitive and negative. Same fears, same doubts, same stories, running on a loop day after day, year after year, like a record that no one has ever bothered to change. And here's what makes this so critical. Your inner voice doesn't simply reflect your reality. It creates it. The way you talk to yourself determines what you attempt, what you avoid, what you believe is possible, and ultimately, what kind of life you construct. It's the most influential conversation you will ever have, and most people are completely unaware of it. Think about someone you know who moves through life with genuine confidence. Someone who takes calculated risks, recovers from setbacks quickly, and seems to believe in themselves even when circumstances go sideways. Someone who doesn't collapse when things get hard, but instead gets curious, gets deliberate, and gets back to work. Now think about someone you know who always seems one step from collapse. Someone who quits early, turns small problems into catastrophes, and talks themselves out of opportunities before they even try. The gap between those two people isn't talent. It's not luck. It's not the family they were born into or the advantages they received. It's the story they narrate to themselves every single day. So let's examine the most common traps, the thought patterns that are quietly draining your potential without you even recognizing it. The first trap is catastrophic thinking. This is when your brain sprints directly to the worst possible outcome. You send a message and don't receive a reply by end of day, and your mind tells you that you've offended someone, damaged the relationship, or are about to lose everything. You feel a brief physical discomfort, and your brain starts imagining serious illness. You make one misstep in a meeting, and your inner voice declares you incompetent. Catastrophic thinking isn't just unpleasant, it's expensive. It costs you sleep, focus, relationships, and courage. And the cruelest part? The disaster almost never actually arrives. The second trap is all or nothing thinking. You eat one meal that wasn't on your plan, and your brain announces the entire week is ruined. You miss one workout, and your inner voice tells you you're back to square one. You have one difficult day at work, and suddenly your internal narrator is composing an entire story about how you're failing at everything. This binary lens, perfect or worthless, winning or losing, all or nothing, is one of the most creativity-killing, motivation-destroying mental patterns a person can carry through life. Life doesn't exist in black and white, and neither does progress. The third trap is personalization. This is when you make other people's behavior about you, even when it has nothing to do with you. Someone seems distracted in a conversation, and you assume you said something wrong. A colleague is sharp with you, and your brain immediately opens a courtroom in which you are both defendant and judge. A friend cancels plans, and suddenly you're wondering what you did to cause it. The truth? Most of the time, other people are absorbed by their own interior world, their own fears, their own pressures, their own problems, their own inner voice doing exactly what yours does to you. You're rarely the central character in someone else's difficult day. The fourth trap is mind reading. Assuming you know what others think of you. Presuming the room judged your presentation harshly before you've received a single piece of feedback. Assuming your idea was dismissed before you even voiced it. This trap is particularly harmful because it causes you to self-censor, to shrink, to hold back your best thinking, all based on a narrative you constructed entirely inside your own mind with zero external evidence. Now, what do you actually do about all of this? Step 1 is awareness. You cannot change a pattern you haven't identified. Start paying attention to your inner voice the way you'd observe a close friend who's been behaving strangely. Not with judgment, with genuine curiosity. What is it actually saying? What tone does it use? When does it get loudest? What situations trigger the harshest version of it? Step 2 is challenge. When a negative thought surfaces, don't accept it as fact. Cross-examine it. Ask, is this actually true? What evidence do I have for this? What evidence do I have against it? Is this thought helping me or harming me right now? Most of the time, you'll discover that the thought is a feeling wearing the costume of a fact. Powerful feeling, but ultimately unverified. Step 3 is replacement. But do it honestly. Don't plaster false positivity over genuine doubt. If you're struggling financially and you tell yourself, "I am wealthy," your brain will reject it immediately because it recognizes the deception. But, "I'm building the habits that lead to financial stability," that your brain can work with. That's directional, honest, and empowering. The goal is to find thoughts that are both more empowering and genuinely believable. Step 4 is the quality of your questions. The questions you direct at yourself are profoundly powerful because your brain is wired to answer them, whatever they are. Ask, "Why does this always happen to me?" And your brain will search for evidence that you're cursed. Ask, "What can I learn from this?" And your brain will search for growth. Ask, "Why am I so bad at this?" And your brain will build a comprehensive case against you. Ask, "How can I improve at this?" And your brain will start solving. Upgrade your questions, and you upgrade your life. Step 5 is self-compassion. and this one is undervalued almost everywhere. When you make a mistake, when you fall short, when life knocks you sideways, speak to yourself the way you would speak to someone you genuinely care about. Not with excuses, not with sugarcoating, but with the kind of honest, warm, constructive voice you'd use with a close friend facing the exact same situation. You deserve that voice. Not someday, now. Your inner dialogue is the operating system running beneath everything else in your life. You can change your habits, your environment, your routines, your relationships. But if the voice inside your head keeps telling you that you're not enough, not ready, not capable, you'll keep hitting the same invisible ceiling no matter how much you change on the outside. Master the voice and watch the ceiling disappear. Chapter 3: The Art of the Strategic No. There's a word that could reshape your life faster than almost any habit, any routine, or any morning ritual. It's 2 letters, 1 syllable, and most people are absolutely terrified of it. No. Not the apologetic no, not the "let me check my schedule" no, which is really just a yes with a delay built in. Not the no that arrives wrapped in 17 explanations and 3 alternative suggestions and a sincere apology for existing. The clean, clear, confident no. The kind that comes from knowing precisely what you're saying yes to instead. The kind that doesn't require justification because it comes from a place of clarity rather than conflict. Here's the reality nobody tells you when you're young and eager and trying to prove yourself. Every single yes you give is a no to something else. Every time you agree to a commitment that doesn't align with where you're headed, you are simultaneously saying no to the work, the rest, the relationship, or the opportunity that actually matters. You just don't see that second no because it's invisible. It's the meeting that didn't happen, the project that didn't get your best thinking, the relationship that didn't get your full presence. Most people construct their lives around visible commitments and invisible costs. They say yes to the meeting, the favor, the project, the invitation, and they say no to deep focus, personal development, meaningful connection, and their own ambitions. Not because they deliberately chose to sacrifice those things, but because they never stopped to run the numbers. Let's run the numbers right now. Imagine you agree to 1 additional weekly commitment, something that consumes about 2 hours, including travel and follow-up. That's 2 hours per week, 52 weeks in a year. That's 104 hours annually spent on something that wasn't your priority. More than 4 full days gone every single year. Now, multiply that across 5 or 6 commitments that don't genuinely serve your most important goals. You don't have a time problem. You have a boundaries problem. The most focused, most productive, most genuinely successful people you admire are not successful because they said yes to more things. They are successful because they had the clarity and the courage to say no to nearly everything, so they could say a full, wholehearted, undivided yes to the few things that mattered most. Their calendar is not full of everything. It's full of the right things. A legendary investor once described his personal decision-making approach like this. He would write down the 25 most important things he wanted to accomplish. Then he would circle the top 5. Those 5 became his relentless focus. But here's what made his framework remarkable. The remaining 20 didn't become a secondary list to get to eventually. They became his avoid at all costs list. Because he understood that the greatest threat to great work isn't bad opportunities. It's good opportunities that pull you away from exceptional ones. Read that again. The enemy of great is not bad. The enemy of great is good. So why is saying no so difficult? Because we are wired, deeply, evolutionarily wired, to seek approval and avoid rejection. Saying no feels like disappointing someone. It feels like closing a door. It feels, in the moment, like loss. And your brain treats that sensation of social disapproval like a genuine physical threat. But here's what you're not calculating in that moment. The full cost of saying yes. The stress, the resentment, the diluted attention, the gradual erosion of your own priorities. The quiet voice inside that keeps asking, when is it my turn? Saying no strategically is not selfish. It is the most responsible thing you can do for your goals, for the people who depend on your best work, and for the commitments you've already made. Here's how to develop this skill practically. First, get ruthlessly clear on your priorities. Most people struggle to say no because they don't have a powerful enough yes. When you know exactly where you're going, when you have a vivid, specific picture of the life you're actively building, then every request that comes your way either moves you toward that picture or away from it. The decision becomes almost instinctive. Second, create a personal decision filter. Before committing to anything, run it through a set of honest questions. Does this align with my values? Does this move me toward my most important goals? Is this the best use of my time and energy right now? If you can't answer yes to at least 2 of those, the answer is no. Third, stop responding immediately. The impulse to answer on the spot is almost always driven by emotion, the desire to seem helpful, to appear capable, to avoid the awkwardness of the pause. Instead, build in a deliberate buffer. Let me check what I have going on and get back to you. This simple sentence gives your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional reflex. Fourth, develop a set of clean, warm, firm responses. You don't need elaborate explanations. In fact, the longer your explanation, the more it resembles a negotiation you've invited. Try, I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not able to take that on right now. Or, that's not something I can commit to this season. Or, simply, I have to decline, but I hope you find exactly the right person for it. Polite, clear, no opening for debate. Fifth, practice on small things first. Saying no is a muscle, and like any muscle, it needs gradual, progressive training. Start with low-stakes situations, the optional meeting, the favor that would genuinely inconvenience you, the social invitation you'd attend out of obligation rather than genuine desire. Each small no builds your capacity for the larger, more consequential ones. Sixth, recognize manipulation disguised as flattery. You're the only one who can do this. Everyone's counting on you. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't urgent. These are emotional levers, designed precisely to bypass your rational thinking and activate your need for approval. When you identify the pattern, you can respond from strategy instead of instinct. Here's the deeper truth about all of this. The people who genuinely respect you will respect your no. They may be briefly disappointed. That's human and entirely normal. But they will respect you for it. The people who push back hard, who guilt trip, who make your no about their feelings, those are precisely the people whose requests you most need to decline. Your no is a declaration. It says, I know where I'm going. I know what matters. I know what I'm worth. And I'm not willing to trade my future for your comfort. That's not cold. That's not selfish. That's someone who has finally decided to take their own life seriously. And that decision changes everything. Start today. Identify one thing on your list that you said yes to out of obligation, fear, or guilt. Something that genuinely doesn't align with your priorities, and give yourself permission to release it. That space you create, that open, protected, intentional space, that's where your real life has been waiting all along. And here is something worth sitting with as you move from this chapter into everything that follows. Every person you admire for their discipline, their clarity, their boundaries, they did not arrive there by accident. They arrived there through exactly this practice. Through the small, unglamorous, daily act of choosing what matters over what's merely comfortable. Through building the habit of the no so that the yes could mean something real. You have that same capacity. The only question is whether you'll use it. Starting now, starting today, starting with the very next request that arrives and doesn't belong in your life. The framework is here. The understanding is here. The permission is here. Now the only thing left is the decision. And that decision, like all the ones that matter most, belongs entirely to you. Chapter 4. Compound your habits, not just your money. Everyone understands compound interest when it comes to money. You put a little in, leave it alone, let time do its work, and eventually, almost magically, the numbers start growing faster than you can track. A small investment made consistently over decades becomes something extraordinary. Not because of one dramatic deposit, but because of patience, repetition, and time. But here's what almost nobody tells you. Your habits compound in exactly the same way. Every single day, the small things you do or don't do are either quietly building the life you want or quietly dismantling it. There is no neutral. There is no standing still. Every habit is either an investment or a withdrawal, and the returns accumulate in both directions. The morning you choose to move your body instead of hitting snooze, that's a deposit. The evening you choose to read instead of scroll, that's a deposit. The moment you choose a meaningful conversation over isolation, growth over comfort, discipline over impulse, deposit, deposit, deposit. And the reverse is equally true. The daily habits that seem harmless, the midday distraction that stretches into an hour, the nightly routine that consistently steals your sleep, the small avoidances that add up to a life only half lived. Those are withdrawals, and they compound too. Here's the number that should stop you in your tracks. If you improve just 1% every single day for 1 year, you end up approximately 37 times better than when you started. Not 37% better, 37 times better. But if you decline 1% every day for the same year, you drop to nearly zero. The difference between those two trajectories isn't dramatic daily action. It's tiny daily choices made consistently in the same direction. Now here's where most people get this completely wrong. They focus on outcomes instead of identity. They want to lose weight instead of becoming someone who moves their body joyfully. They want to write a book instead of becoming someone who writes every single day. They want to build financial security instead of becoming someone who handles money with intention and discipline. And so they pursue the destination while neglecting the person they need to become to actually get there and stay there. Outcomes are lagging indicators. They're the echo of your habits, not the cause of them. If you want different results, you have to become a different person. And you become a different person one repeated choice at a time. So how do you actually build habits that stick? Habits that compound into something remarkable over months and years. Principle 1. Start embarrassingly small. This is where almost everyone fails. They get inspired, they get motivated, and they attempt to overhaul everything at once. New diet, new workout routine, new morning ritual, new evening wind down, new journaling practice, all starting Monday. And by Wednesday, life has happened. Willpower has run out, and the whole system collapses under its own weight. Here's a better approach. Want to start exercising? Begin with 5 minutes. Want to start reading? Begin with 2 pages. Want to start meditating? Begin with 60 seconds. This isn't about generating results from the habit itself, not yet. It's about building the identity. It's about becoming the kind of person who does this thing consistently, without drama or negotiation. Once that identity is established, once your brain begins to recognize this as simply part of who you are, then you gradually increase the intensity. But the foundation has to come first, always. Principle 2. Habit stacking. Your brain already has deeply ingrained pathways for your existing habits. You brew your morning coffee. You sit at your desk. You put on your shoes. These are automatic. They require almost no mental energy to execute. The most effective thing you can do with a new habit is attach it to one of these existing anchors. After I pour my morning coffee, I will write 3 things I'm grateful for. After I sit at my desk, I will identify my 3 most important tasks before opening anything else. After I put on my workout shoes, I will do at least 10 minutes of movement. No excuses, no negotiation. Specificity matters enormously. Vague intentions evaporate. Specific triggers activate. Tell your brain exactly when and where the new habit happens, and it will start to expect it. Principle 3. Design your environment before you need willpower. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Your environment is more powerful than your motivation every single time. If unhealthy food is in your kitchen, you will eventually eat it. If your phone is on your nightstand, you will eventually check it at midnight. If your running shoes are buried in the closet, you will eventually skip the run. Stop relying on willpower. Willpower is a finite resource that gets depleted by stress, decision fatigue, and the ordinary demands of a full life. Instead, design your environment so that good choices are easy and poor choices require deliberate effort. Put the book on your pillow. Put the water bottle on your desk. Put your workout clothes where you'll see them first thing in the morning. Remove the apps that drain you. Log out of the platforms that pull you into comparison and distraction. Make the constructive path obvious and the destructive path inconvenient. This isn't weakness. This is wisdom. Principle 4. Make good habits immediately rewarding. Your brain is wired to repeat behaviors that feel good right now. The problem with most beneficial habits is that their rewards are delayed, sometimes by weeks, months, or years. The problem with most harmful habits is that their rewards are immediate. This asymmetry is why change is genuinely hard. The solution is to create immediate satisfaction around your good habits. After you exercise, don't just think about your future health. Notice how you feel right now. The energy, the clarity, the quiet sense of pride in following through. After you choose the nourishing meal, actually savor it. After you complete a focused work session without distraction, genuinely celebrate it. You can also use what some researchers call temptation bundling, pairing something you love with something you're building. Only listen to your favorite playlist during your workout. Only watch a show you genuinely enjoy while doing something productive around the house. Pleasure becomes the reward for the habit, not the escape from it. Principle 5. Never miss twice. You will miss days. Life will intervene. You'll get sick, travel, face unexpected demands, or simply have a day where everything falls apart. That's not failure. That's being human. The rule isn't never miss. The rule is never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the beginning of a new pattern. The moment you miss a day, your only job is to ensure tomorrow happens. Not perfectly, just consistently. Show up, even if it's at 10% of your usual effort. Because 10% maintained is infinitely more powerful than 0% repeated. The most consistent people in the world aren't the ones who never stumble. They're the ones who get back up faster than everyone else, who treat the stumble as information rather than identity, and who refuse to let a single missed day become a missed week. Principle 6. Track the behavior, not just the result. Get a simple calendar. Mark an X every day you follow through on your habit. After a few weeks, you'll have a chain, a visible record of your own consistency. And something interesting happens. You won't want to break the chain. Not because of pride, but because you'll start to see yourself differently. You'll start to see someone who follows through. That identity shift, that gradual recognition of yourself as a person who keeps commitments, that's the compound interest of habits doing its quiet, powerful work. Here's what I want you to hold from this chapter. You don't need to be dramatically different to have a dramatically different life. You just need to be slightly better, slightly more consistent, slightly more intentional, every day. Not some days, every day. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not filled with grand gestures. It's filled with small, repeated, unglamorous actions that most people underestimate because they don't look impressive in the moment. But time reveals everything. A year from now, 5 years from now, the person who chose consistency over intensity, deposit after quiet deposit, will be living in a world the impatient version of themselves couldn't even begin to imagine. Start your chain today, even if it's just one link. Chapter 5. The 80-20 Rule Applied to Everything. Let me paint a picture you might recognize. You finish a full day of work, emails answered, meetings attended, tasks checked off, messages replied to, and you collapse into your evening feeling simultaneously exhausted and strangely unaccomplished. Like you were busy all day but somehow didn't move forward. Like you ran hard but didn't get anywhere meaningful. That feeling has a name, and it's not laziness. It's not disorganization. It's not even poor time management. It's what happens when you haven't identified your vital few. In the late 1800s, an Italian economist noticed something peculiar about wealth distribution in his country. Roughly 80% of the land was held by about 20% of the population. Curious, he began searching for this pattern elsewhere. In his garden? In business records? In agricultural data? And he found it everywhere. 80% of the peas in his garden came from 20% of the pods. 80% of outcomes consistently traced back to 20% of causes. This became known as the Pareto principle, or more commonly, the 80-20 rule. And once you truly see it, you cannot unsee it. It's everywhere. In your work, your relationships, your health, your finances, your learning. Everywhere. But here's the part that matters most. This isn't just an interesting observation. It's a roadmap. If 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts, then the most important question you can ask yourself is not, how do I do more? It's, which 20% is actually driving everything? Because once you identify that vital 20%, you have a choice. You can protect it, prioritize it, and pour your best energy into it. Or you can keep doing what most people do, spreading yourself thin across 100 tasks, giving everything mediocre attention, and wondering why progress feels so painfully slow. Let's make this real and personal. In your career, think honestly about your work over the last month. Which activities, conversations, or decisions actually moved things forward in a meaningful way? Which created real value, the kind that others noticed, the kind that genuinely advanced your goals? For most people in most roles, if they're ruthlessly honest, it comes down to a handful of things. A few key relationships, a few core responsibilities, a few decisions that actually mattered. Everything else, the reactive emails, the low-stakes meetings, the administrative busywork, was the 80% that produced 20% of the value, or less. This doesn't mean those things don't need to happen. It means they shouldn't be receiving your best hours and your sharpest attention. In your learning, here's something that changes how you approach growth entirely. In almost any skill you want to develop, 80% of your practical capability will come from 20% of the knowledge. Learning a new language, a core vocabulary of roughly 1,000 words, covers the vast majority of everyday conversation. Learning an instrument, a handful of foundational techniques underpin the majority of music you'll ever want to play. Learning to cook, master a few fundamental methods, and you can create almost anything. Most people try to learn everything before they feel competent enough to begin. The 80-20 thinker asks, what's the 20% I need to master first to unlock 80% of the results? Then they go deep on that and become genuinely capable far faster than the person who's trying to learn everything simultaneously. In your relationships, this one requires honesty and a measure of courage. Think about the relationships in your life that genuinely energize you. The people who challenge you, support you, believe in your potential, and make you better simply by being present. Now think about the relationships that consistently drain you. The ones that feel heavy, obligatory, one-sided, or persistently negative. The 80-20 rule suggests that roughly 20% of your relationships produce 80% of your joy, growth, and genuine connection. Yet most people spread their relational energy so thin, trying to maintain dozens of surface-level connections, that they never go deep enough with anyone to experience real belonging. You don't need more relationships. You need deeper ones with fewer, better people. In your health, the fundamentals, adequate sleep, regular movement, whole food nutrition, stress management, account for the vast majority of your health outcomes. Not the supplements, not the optimization protocols, not the complicated biohacking routines. The consistent, unglamorous basics that most people chronically underinvest in. Before you chase the 20% refinements, ask yourself honestly whether you've truly mastered the 80% fundamentals. Most people haven't, and no amount of sophisticated optimization compensates for consistently poor sleep and unmanaged chronic stress. In your finances, the core principles of building genuine wealth are almost embarrassingly straightforward. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference consistently over time. Avoid high-interest debt. Give your investments time to compound. That's the vital 20% that drives 80% of financial outcomes for ordinary people who build extraordinary security across decades. Yet the financial industry profits from convincing you that wealth building is complex, that you need dozens of strategies, specialized instruments, and constant active management. For most people, that complexity is simply noise drowning out the signal. Now, here's the hardest part of applying the 80-20 rule. It's not identifying your vital 20%. That's actually not that difficult once you start paying honest attention. The hard part is eliminating, or at least radically minimizing, the other 80%. This requires something most people find deeply uncomfortable: the willingness to disappoint, to leave things undone that others think should be done, to say no to good opportunities in order to protect space for great ones, to be strategically incomplete rather than comprehensively mediocre. The 80-20 rule is not permission to be lazy. It is permission to be focused. And focus, real, deep, sustained focus on the things that actually matter, is perhaps the rarest and most valuable resource in the modern world. Here's a practical exercise. This week, at the end of each day, ask yourself one question. What were the one or two things I did today that actually moved the needle? Write them down. After 5 days, examine your list. You'll start to see patterns. You'll start to see your vital few emerging from the noise. Then ask yourself a harder question. How much of my time and energy is actually flowing toward those things? For most people, the answer is sobering. The activities that matter most are receiving the scraps, the leftover hours, the tired attention, the fragmented focus, while the activities that matter least are getting prime time. Flip that. Protect your vital few with everything you have. Schedule them first. Give them your sharpest hours. Build walls around them. Then, gently, strategically, without guilt, let the rest take care of itself. Because a life of focused excellence in a few things will always outperform a life of scattered adequacy in many. Always. Chapter 6. Your network is your net worth, but not how you think. Picture this scene. You're at a professional event, the kind with name badges and lukewarm coffee, and people scanning the room while pretending to listen to whoever is speaking to them. Someone walks up, shakes your hand with practiced enthusiasm, hands you their card, talks about themselves for 4 minutes, asks what you do, half listens to the answer, and then excuses themselves to repeat the process with someone more strategically useful. You've met this person. You may have been this person, and you walked away feeling vaguely empty, like something that was supposed to be meaningful turned out to be transactional theater. That experience, that hollow feeling, is networking done wrong. And unfortunately, it's how most people understand the concept entirely. When people hear your network is your net worth, they picture exactly that scene. They imagine collecting contacts like trading cards, accumulating connections like digital trophies, attending events, and performing relatability. They think networking is a numbers game. The more people you know, the more valuable your network. But that's not how any of this actually works. Real networking isn't about who you know, it's about who genuinely knows you, and why. Think about the meaningful opportunities that have arrived in your life. The role that came through a conversation, the introduction that opened a door you didn't even know existed. The piece of advice that shifted your entire perspective at exactly the right moment. Now, trace those back. Were they the result of a business card exchange at a conference? Or were they the result of a genuine relationship, one built on trust, real interest, and mutual investment over time? Almost always, it's the latter. The most connected people in the world didn't build those networks by networking. They built them by being genuinely curious about other people and consistently generous with what they had to offer. This is the principle at the heart of everything. Give first, always, without keeping score. When you encounter someone, your first thought should not be, "What can this person do for me?" Your first thought should be, "What can I genuinely offer this person?" It might be an introduction to someone who could help them. It might be a resource, an insight, a perspective, a well-timed word of encouragement. It might simply be your genuine, unhurried attention, which is rarer and more valuable than most people realize. This isn't naive altruism. It's deeply strategic because it's built on one of the most powerful principles in human psychology: reciprocity. When you sincerely help someone without expecting anything in return, something remarkable happens. They want to help you back. Not out of obligation, but out of genuine warmth, because you've established yourself as someone who adds value rather than extracts it. And that reputation spreads. It becomes how people describe you when your name surfaces in conversations you're not in the room for. Think about that for a moment. Your network is working for you or against you in rooms you will never enter. People are mentioning your name, describing your character, recommending or not recommending you, based entirely on the impression you've created through your interactions. The question is, what are they saying? Here's another dimension most people completely overlook. You should be building relationships before you need them. Most people only reach out when they require something. They disappear for months or years and then resurface with a request. And the people on the receiving end of that pattern notice, even if they never say so. It feels transactional. It feels like being remembered only when you're useful. The most effective relationship builders maintain consistent, low-pressure contact, not through mass newsletters or generic check-ins, but through genuine, specific, thoughtful moments. Sharing something relevant to a particular person's interests, remembering something important in their life, and following up. Celebrating their wins publicly and sincerely, showing up for them before they ask. These small gestures accumulate into something profound: trust. And trust is the true currency of every relationship that lasts. Now let's talk about who you're building relationships with, because this matters more than most people acknowledge. Most people focus exclusively upward. They want access to people more successful, more connected, more influential than they currently are. And while those relationships are genuinely valuable, this tunnel vision causes you to miss something crucial. The person across from you today, regardless of their current title or circumstances, may become the most important connection of your life in 5 years. The junior colleague who seems unremarkable right now might found a company that reshapes an industry. The peer from a completely different field might introduce you to an opportunity you couldn't have imagined. Treat every person as if they matter, not as a strategy, but because they actually do. Quality will always outperform quantity in your network. 10 deep, genuine, mutually invested relationships will create more opportunity, more support, and more joy than 500 surface-level connections. Deep relationships require time, attention, and consistent investment. If you spread those resources across too many people, none of your relationships ever reach the depth where real trust and real possibility can emerge. Be selective about where you invest your relational energy. Then invest deeply, generously, and consistently. One of the most powerful things you can do, and one of the most overlooked, is to become a connector. When you introduce two people in your network who could genuinely benefit each other, something remarkable happens. Both of them feel a sense of gratitude toward you. Both see you as someone who makes things happen for others. You become a hub, a central node, rather than just another point in the network. People think of hubs when opportunities arise. People think of givers when they have something valuable to share. Position yourself as both. Follow up consistently, but authentically. After meeting someone meaningful, reach out within a day or two. Reference something specific from your conversation, something that demonstrates you were genuinely present, genuinely listening. Then stay in occasional, real contact. Not every week, not with mass messages, but enough that your relationship has a pulse, that it's warm and alive, rather than dormant and forgotten. And finally, perhaps most importantly, show up for people during their difficult moments. Anyone can celebrate someone during their wins. The person who reaches out during the struggle, who checks in during the hard season, who offers genuine support when there's nothing obvious to gain, that person becomes irreplaceable. That person earns a kind of loyalty that no amount of strategic networking can manufacture. Your network is your net worth, but not because of what you can extract from it, because of who you become in the process of genuinely building it. Be the person people are genuinely glad they know. Be the person whose name, when it comes up in a room you're not in, makes people lean forward and say, "Oh, I know them. Let me tell you about them." That reputation, built quietly over years through consistent generosity and genuine care, that's the most valuable professional asset you will ever own. Chapter 7. Emotional intelligence is your superpower. Think about the smartest person you've ever known, not the most successful, not the happiest, not the most admired or the most effective in a room full of people. Just the smartest, the highest raw intellectual horsepower you've personally encountered. Now ask yourself honestly, are they the most successful person you know? Are they the one who navigates life with the most grace, builds the deepest relationships, leads others most effectively, recovers from setbacks most resiliently? Probably not. And that gap between raw intelligence and actual life effectiveness is one of the most important things you will ever understand about yourself and the people around you. Because what fills that gap? What determines whether intelligence becomes impact? Whether potential becomes reality? Whether knowledge becomes results? It's emotional intelligence, not IQ, EQ. Decades of research now point to the same uncomfortable conclusion.
Emotional intelligence is a stronger predictor of success in career, relationships, leadership, and overall life satisfaction than cognitive intelligence alone. People with high emotional intelligence earn more, lead better, recover faster, connect more deeply, and report higher levels of genuine fulfillment. And here's the part that should genuinely excite you. Unlike IQ, which is largely fixed, emotional intelligence can be deliberately developed at any age. Every conversation you have is practice. Every difficult moment is a training ground. Every relationship is a classroom. So what exactly is emotional intelligence? Let's break it down into its 4 core components, because understanding the map is the first step to navigating the territory. The first component is self-awareness. This is the foundation everything else is constructed on. Self-awareness is your ability to recognize what you're feeling in real time, to notice your emotional state as it's happening, rather than being swept along by it unconsciously. Most people have almost no awareness of what they're actually feeling in a given moment. They know when they're furious or ecstatic because those emotions are loud. But the subtle currents, the low-grade anxiety making them short with people they love, the quiet resentment affecting their motivation, the underlying fear disguising itself as procrastination, those go unnoticed. And what goes unnoticed goes unmanaged. Start building self-awareness through a simple practice, the emotional check-in. Several times throughout your day, pause for 30 seconds and ask yourself 3 questions. What am I feeling right now? What triggered this feeling? How is this feeling shaping my thinking and behavior? Over weeks and months, this practice creates something invaluable: space between stimulus and response. The ability to notice what's happening inside you before it controls what happens outside you.
The second component is self-management. Self-awareness tells you what you're feeling. Self-management determines what you do with that feeling. This is not about suppression. Suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear, it makes them go underground, where they influence your behavior in ways you can't see or control. Self-management is about choosing your response rather than being hijacked by your reaction. The essential tool here is the pause. Between any trigger and your response, there exists a moment, sometimes just a few seconds, where you have a genuine choice. When you feel frustration rising in a conversation, pause. When a message triggers immediate defensiveness, pause before you reply. When a situation activates your anxiety, pause, breathe, and ask, what response here actually serves me and the situation? The other crucial self-management skill is reframing, the deliberate choice to find an interpretation of difficult events that serves your growth, without pretending the difficulty isn't real. The third component is social awareness, your ability to read the room, to pick up on the emotional information being broadcast by the people around you, not just through their words, but through their tone, their body language, their silences, the things they almost say but don't. Most people are so absorbed in their own internal experience that they miss enormous amounts of emotional information sitting right in front of them. Developing social awareness starts with genuine curiosity about other people's inner experience. What is this person actually feeling right now? What might they need in this moment that they're not directly expressing? The fourth component is relationship management, where everything converges. This is what allows you to deliver difficult feedback in a way that's received rather than rejected. It's what allows you to influence someone's thinking without making them feel manipulated. One of the most powerful relationship management skills is empathy. Real empathy is not sympathy from a comfortable distance. It's the ability to genuinely step into someone else's emotional experience, to see the situation through their eyes, and then respond in a way that acknowledges that reality. When people feel truly understood, walls come down, defensiveness softens, and trust accelerates years ahead of where it would otherwise be. Another crucial skill is what researchers call emotional contagion management. The ability to be intentional about the emotional tone you bring into a room. Emotions spread. When a leader walks in radiating quiet confidence, the whole team settles. When they walk in radiating panic, the whole team destabilizes. You are broadcasting an emotional signal in every interaction, whether you're aware of it or not. The question is whether you're broadcasting intentionally or by default. Finally, and this may be the most practically valuable insight in this chapter, emotional intelligence dramatically improves your ability to navigate conflict. Most conflicts are not fundamentally about facts or logic. They're about emotions. Feeling dismissed, disrespected, misunderstood, or undervalued. When you address the emotional layer first, genuinely acknowledging how someone feels before attempting to solve the practical problem, you remove the fuel from the fire. Validate the feeling, then address the issue. This sequence, practiced consistently, will transform your most difficult relationships and your most tense professional situations. Emotional intelligence is not a soft skill. It is the hard skill that makes every other skill more effective. It's the multiplier, the force behind the force. In a world where technical capabilities are increasingly automated, the capacity to understand, connect with, and genuinely influence other human beings becomes not just valuable, but irreplaceable. Develop your emotional intelligence with the same seriousness you bring to any other capability. Because the person who can make others feel seen, heard, understood, and valued will always have a place at every table that matters. Chapter 8. Think in decades, not days. Here's a question most people have never seriously sat with. Where do you want to be in 20 years? Not vaguely, not successful or happy or financially secure, because those are feelings, not destinations. Specifically, concretely, what does your life actually look like 2 decades from now? What kind of work are you doing? What do your closest relationships feel like? What kind of person have you become in your character, your health, your wisdom, your contribution to the world around you? Most people have never genuinely answered that question, not because they don't care about their future, but because they're so consumed by the immediate that the distant feels almost irrelevant. Today's problem, this week's deadline, this month's pressure, these things are loud and urgent and real. The 20-year version of your life is quiet, abstract, and easy to postpone. And that postponement, that chronic prioritization of the urgent over the important, is one of the most expensive habits a person can have. Here's what nobody tells you clearly enough. The quality of your life 20 years from now is being decided right now. Not in some dramatic pivotal moment, in the ordinary, unremarkable choices you're making today. The habits you're building or neglecting. The skills you're developing or ignoring. The relationships you're investing in or taking for granted. 20 years from now, you will be living in the house that today's choices are quietly constructing. The only question is, what kind of house it will be. Short-term thinking keeps you competing on the same crowded field as everyone else. When your horizon is this week or this quarter, you're fighting for the same opportunities, reacting to the same pressures, making the same compromises as every other short-term thinker around you. But when you extend your horizon to decades, you access strategies that are completely invisible to short-term thinkers. You can invest in skills, relationships, health, and assets that don't pay off immediately, but compound dramatically over time. In your career, the short-term thinker optimizes for the next paycheck. The long-term thinker asks, what skills will be most valuable in 10 years? What reputation am I building through my daily behavior? What relationships am I cultivating that will open doors I can't yet see? The short-term thinker often earns more in year 1. The long-term thinker almost always wins by year 10, and it's not close. In your finances, compound interest is the clearest mathematical proof that long-term thinking creates exponential advantage. The person who begins investing modestly and consistently at 25 will almost always build more wealth than the person who waits until they have more money to start. Time is the engine. Patience is the fuel. Short-term thinking starves the engine before it can generate real power. In your health, every chronic condition that devastates people in their 50s and 60s was built slowly, invisibly, through daily choices made in their 30s and 40s. None of these patterns feel catastrophic in the moment. Collectively, over decades, they are. The long-term health thinker doesn't need to be perfect every day. They just need to be honest about the trajectory their daily choices are creating. In your relationships, short-term thinking avoids difficult conversations because conflict feels uncomfortable right now. Long-term relationship thinking understands that the depth of a connection 20 years from now is being built or eroded through thousands of small moments happening right now. The relationships that sustain people across decades are not the ones that were always easy. They're the ones that were consistently chosen, even when choosing was inconvenient. To develop this capacity, start with a written 20-year vision. Not a vague wish list, a specific, emotionally resonant description of what you want your life to actually look like. Where are you? Who's with you? What have you built? What kind of person have you become? Then work backwards. If that's where you want to be in 20 years, where do you need to be in 10, in 5, in 1? Map the terrain with directional clarity. Here's what I find most powerful about long-term thinking. It's the great equalizer. You don't need exceptional talent or perfect circumstances to benefit from it. You just need to be willing to wait, and to keep doing the right things while you wait. Most people won't. Most people will get impatient, abandon the long game, and let urgency crowd out the important. That's your opportunity. While the short-term thinkers scramble for whatever's available right now, you're quietly, patiently building something that compounds. Something that 2 decades from now will look like overnight success to everyone who wasn't watching the whole time. Plant the seeds today. Think in decades. Let time do what only time can do. Chapter 9. Failure is data, not defeat. Let me tell you about the moment most people quietly give up. It's not dramatic. There's no announcement, no formal decision, no clear line crossed. It happens in the small, private aftermath of something that didn't work. A project that fell flat, a pitch that got rejected, a relationship that ended badly, a goal that slipped away despite genuine effort. And in that quiet aftermath, a story begins to take shape. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe this is a sign. And that story, not the failure itself, but the meaning we attach to it, is where most people's potential quietly goes to die. Here's what I want you to understand at the deepest level possible. Failure is not a verdict. It's data. It's feedback. It's the universe's most direct communication about what needs adjusting, what needs refining, what needs to be approached differently. Every failure contains valuable, specific, actionable information that success rarely provides with the same clarity. The problem isn't failure. The problem is what we've been conditioned to believe failure means. From childhood, most of us absorbed a story that goes like this. Failure means you weren't good enough. Failure is something to be ashamed of, something to hide, minimize, or avoid at all costs. And so we construct our lives around avoiding it. We choose the safe path over the meaningful one. We attempt only what we're already confident we can achieve. We stay in the comfortable lane, not because it leads where we want to go, but because at least we won't crash. And then we wonder why our lives feel smaller than we imagined they would. The fear of failure is almost always more limiting than failure itself. The crash you're trying to avoid rarely destroys you. The life lived in perpetual avoidance of the crash, the narrowed ambitions, the unrealized potential, the persistent wondering about what might have been. That's the real cost. Think about how you learned to walk. You fell hundreds of times, but at no point did you develop a belief that you were a failure at walking. You fell, your brain processed the information, your body adjusted, and you tried again. Each fall was a lesson with legs. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, most people lose that relationship with falling. They start interpreting each fall as a statement about their worth rather than information about their approach. They say, "I'm not good at this," when what they mean is, "I haven't figured this out yet." When failure is about your approach, it's fixable. When failure is about your identity, it feels permanent. Keep failure firmly in the category of approach. The most accomplished people in any field don't fail less than everyone else. They fail more, not because they're worse at what they do, but because they attempt more. Every significant achievement carries the fingerprints of the failures that informed it. The entrepreneurs whose companies you admire have graveyards of failed initiatives behind their successes. The failure is part of the process, not despite the success, but because of it. Here's how to change your relationship with failure practically. First, separate your identity from your results. You are not your outcomes. You are the person having the outcomes, and that person can learn, adjust, and try again. Practice saying this to yourself: "This attempt didn't work. I am not the attempt." Second, conduct a failure debrief. Instead of moving past failure as quickly as possible, sit with it long enough to extract its lessons. Ask 4 questions. What actually happened? What worked, even partially? What didn't work, and why? What would I do differently with the information I now have? These questions transform a painful experience into a strategic asset. Third, fail fast and fail cheap wherever possible. Design your experiments so that you get feedback quickly and the cost of any single failure remains manageable. Don't invest 5 years testing an assumption you could test in 5 weeks. Generate learning as efficiently as possible. Fourth, normalize failure in your conversations. Most people hide their failures and perform their successes. When you start speaking openly about what hasn't worked and what you've learned from it, you free yourself from the performance, and you give everyone around you permission to do the same. Finally, and this may be the most important thing in this chapter, understand that your biggest failures often arrive just before your most significant breakthroughs. The hardest, most discouraging moment, the one where giving up felt most rational, came just before everything shifted in the stories of people who achieved something remarkable. Most people quit in that moment, not because they're weak, but because they interpret the darkness as evidence that there's no dawn coming, rather than as a sign that the dawn is very close. When you're in your hardest moment, remember this: the fact that it's hard doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Sometimes it means you're almost there. Keep going. Extract the lesson. Adjust the approach. and go again. Chapter 10. Systems beat goals every time. Let me say something that might feel slightly heretical, given how much of the personal development world is built around goal setting. Goals are overrated. Not useless, not worthless, but dramatically, consistently overrated. And the obsession with them is quietly undermining more people's progress than it's enabling. Here's the paradox that most goal-focused thinking misses. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. A goal is a destination you want to reach. A system is the road you actually travel. And no matter how clearly you can picture the destination, if the road you're walking every day doesn't lead there, you won't arrive. Goals tell you where you want to go. Systems determine whether you actually get there. Consider two people who set the same goal. Run a half marathon 6 months from now. The first person is goal-focused. They visualize the finish line, announce it to friends, download a training app, and feel motivated for about 10 days. Until life intervenes, motivation fades, and suddenly 6 months have passed and they're nowhere close. The second person is systems-focused. They ask one question: what kind of person completes a half marathon? And what does that person do consistently? Then they build a system around that identity. 3 runs per week, non-negotiable. Not because the goal demands it, but because that's what this kind of person does. 6 months later, the first person is making excuses. The second person is crossing the finish line. The goal was identical. The system made all the difference. Goals also create what I call the arrival fallacy, the belief that fulfillment exists on the other side of achievement. You tell yourself you'll feel satisfied when you hit the number, finish the project, earn the recognition. But 2 things happen when you actually arrive. Either the achievement doesn't feel as significant as you imagined, because the bar has already shifted, or you feel a brief surge of satisfaction followed by an emptiness that sends you searching for the next goal. Systems solve this elegantly. When you're focused on the daily process, you can experience success right now. Every day you follow your system, you've won that day. Goals also create a motivation problem. When you set a goal, motivation is high at the beginning. Then it always fades. Motivation is emotional, and emotions fluctuate. If your behavior depends on motivation, your consistency will be as variable as your emotions, which means very little genuine progress. Systems remove motivation from the equation. When following your system is simply what you do, as automatic as brushing your teeth, you don't need to feel motivated to execute. You just do it, because that's who you are. Identity is the engine that systems run on. The most durable habits and systems are built not around outcomes, but around identity. Not, I want to run a half marathon, but I am a runner. Not, I want to write a book, but I am a writer. When your behavior is anchored to your identity, every time you follow your system, you're casting a vote for the person you believe yourself to be. And every vote makes that identity stronger, more real, more automatic. So how do you build systems that actually work? Start with the smallest viable version. Design your system around your worst days, not your best ones. What's the minimum you can do to maintain the identity even when you're exhausted? If your system requires 60 minutes on a good day, it needs a 10-minute version for hard days. Because 10 minutes maintained across years will always outperform 60 minutes abandoned after 3 weeks. Design your environment to support the system. If you want to write every morning, have your document open before you sleep. If you want to exercise, have everything ready the moment you wake up. Stop relying on willpower. It's a depletable resource. Environmental design is permanent infrastructure. Build the infrastructure. Track your consistency visibly. Mark the days you followed through. Watch the pattern build. There's something deeply motivating about a visual record of your own follow-through, a growing reluctance to break the chain that becomes its own form of momentum. Review and refine your systems regularly. As you grow and as your circumstances evolve, your systems need to evolve with you. Schedule a brief monthly review to ask, what's working? What's not? What needs adjusting? The system that gets you here is not necessarily the system that gets you there. Here's what I want you to carry from this chapter. Stop asking, what do I want to achieve? Start asking, what kind of person do I want to become? And what would that person do consistently? Then, build a system around the answer. Start small. Execute consistently. Trust that identity, built one repeated action at a time, will eventually produce outcomes that feel almost miraculous to the people who only saw the result and never witnessed the process. Your goals might give you direction, but your systems, your daily, consistent, identity-anchored systems, will determine your destination. Choose them carefully, protect them fiercely, and let the compound effect of small, repeated actions do what it always does. Quietly, patiently, inevitably, build something extraordinary. And remember this above all else. The people who seem to operate at an extraordinary level, who produce remarkable results year after year, while others spin in place, are not operating from some rare gift or unusual access. They are operating from systems. Systems designed deliberately. Systems refined consistently. Systems built around a clear picture of who they are choosing to become. That capacity belongs to you too. It always has. The question is simply whether you'll choose to build it, starting today, starting now, starting with the very next choice you make. That choice, made quietly, made today, made without drama or announcement, is where everything begins. Again. Chapter 11. Manage your energy, not just your time. Here's a scenario I want you to sit with honestly. Two people, same 24 hours, same general responsibilities, Same basic circumstances. One of them ends the day feeling like they moved mountains. Clear, focused, productive, genuinely satisfied with what they created. The other ends the day feeling like they ran a marathon without moving an inch. Exhausted, scattered, vaguely behind on everything, wondering where the hours went. Same time, completely different experience, completely different results. The difference isn't discipline, it isn't intelligence. It isn't even how they managed their schedule. It's how they managed their energy. We've built an entire culture around time management. Calendars, productivity systems, time blocking, scheduling apps, efficiency frameworks. And time management matters. But it's missing the deeper variable that actually determines the quality of what happens inside each hour. Here's the truth that changes everything. You cannot create more time. But you can dramatically change the quality of energy you bring to the time you have. A focused, energized hour produces more than 4 scattered, depleted hours. Every time, without exception. And yet, most people unconsciously manage their hours while completely ignoring their energy. And then wonder why, despite being busy all day, they feel like they accomplished so little of real value. The answer isn't to find more hours. The answer is to show up fully inside the ones you already have. Your energy operates on 4 distinct levels simultaneously. Physical energy is your body's basic capacity for sustained activity, the foundation everything else rests on. Mental energy is your brain's ability to focus, think clearly, and process complexity. Emotional energy is your capacity to remain resilient, present, and genuinely engaged with others. And purposeful energy is the deep fuel that comes from feeling connected to something meaningful, from knowing that your work and your life actually matter to something beyond the immediate. Most people manage only their physical energy, and even that they manage poorly. They use stimulants to mask fatigue instead of addressing its root causes. They push through exhaustion instead of recovering strategically. They treat rest as laziness rather than the biological necessity it actually is. The result is a life lived at 60% capacity, functional but never fully alive, productive in appearance but never truly excellent in execution. Physical energy begins with understanding your chronotype, your body's natural rhythm of alertness and recovery. Some people peak cognitively in the early morning. Others hit their stride mid-morning or early afternoon. Still others do their sharpest thinking in the evening. This isn't preference or personality, it's biology. Your circadian rhythm is real, and it's specific to you. The tragedy is that most people schedule their most important work at random, whenever it happens to fit into their calendar, rather than deliberately aligning their most demanding tasks with their natural peak performance windows. Here's a simple but powerful shift. Identify your peak 2 to 3 hours of cognitive performance each day and protect them fiercely. No meetings during these hours if you can avoid it. No email, no administrative tasks, no reactive work. These hours are reserved exclusively for your most important, most cognitively demanding, highest value work. This single change, aligning your best work with your best energy, can produce more meaningful output than any productivity framework you'll ever try. Mental energy is where modern life is creating a silent crisis most people haven't fully recognized. Your brain consumes roughly 20% of your total energy, an extraordinary amount for an organ that represents about 2% of your body weight. And in today's environment, your mental energy is being depleted at unprecedented rates. Constant notifications, relentless decision-making, chronic multitasking, endless context switching. Each switch carries a cognitive cost that accumulates throughout the day. By early afternoon, most people's mental energy is already significantly depleted, which is why so many find themselves staring at their screen, unable to think clearly, reaching for stimulants, defaulting to low-value reactive tasks rather than meaningful creative work. The solution is deliberate mental energy management. Reduce decision fatigue by automating routine choices. Protect deep work blocks where you focus on a single, meaningful task without interruption for extended periods. The research is unambiguous. Sustained, focused attention produces dramatically better results than the fragmented attention that characterizes most modern work. Even 90 minutes of genuine, deep focus twice a day will outperform 8 hours of distracted busyness. Take real breaks, not switching from work to scrolling, which is just different stimulation. Real breaks involve genuine disengagement, a walk outside, a few minutes of quiet, a brief physical activity. These breaks don't cost you productivity. They dramatically increase it by allowing your brain to consolidate, recover, and return to focus with renewed capacity. Emotional energy is perhaps the most consistently underestimated dimension of performance. Your emotional state is not just a feeling, it's a cognitive environment. When your emotional energy is high, your thinking is more creative, your problem-solving more effective, your communication more nuanced, your resilience stronger. When you're carrying unresolved conflict, chronic negativity, or persistent anxiety, even simple tasks feel heavier than they should. Conduct an honest energy audit. For 1 week, pay attention to how you feel before and after every significant interaction and activity in your life. Notice what gives you energy and what takes it. Notice which people leave you feeling more alive and which ones leave you feeling hollowed out. Then make deliberate choices based on what you discover. Spend more time with the energizers. Create boundaries around the drains. Invest in the activities that genuinely restore you rather than merely distract you from depletion. Purposeful energy is what allows extraordinary people to sustain extraordinary effort across years and decades. It's what separates people who burn out from people who keep going. Not because the ones who keep going have more discipline, but because they're connected to something that makes the effort feel genuinely worth it. Ask yourself regularly, why does this work matter? Who does it serve? How does what I do today connect to the life I'm building? These questions are not soft. They are the infrastructure of sustained high performance. Manage your time well, but manage your energy first, because time without energy is just hours passing. Energy without time constraints still finds a way to create something remarkable. Chapter 12. Master the Art of Clear Communication. Every relationship you have exists entirely inside communication, not inside your feelings about someone, not inside your intentions toward them, not inside what you mean to say. Inside the actual words, the actual tone, the actual presence you bring to the actual exchange. Your career exists inside communication. Every opportunity that has come your way arrived through a conversation or message where something you said opened a door. Every opportunity you've missed had something to do with a message that didn't land, a conversation that went sideways, a moment where what you meant and what was received were two entirely different things. Your closest relationships exist inside communication too. The depth of any connection is almost perfectly correlated with the quality of the communication within it. The relationships that feel shallow feel that way because the communication is shallow. The relationships that feel irreplaceable feel that way because something real and honest is being exchanged. The quality of your communication is the quality of your life. Not approximately, precisely. And yet most people have never deliberately developed this skill. They communicate the way they learned to communicate growing up, carrying patterns and defaults from their environment, and then spend decades wondering why they're being misunderstood, why their ideas aren't landing, why the relationships they want feel just out of reach. Here's the most important principle before we get into the how. The burden of clarity always sits with the speaker, never the listener. If someone misunderstands you, that's not their failure, it's yours. It means you didn't communicate clearly enough. This might feel uncomfortable. Most people prefer to believe that others simply aren't paying close enough attention. But the moment you accept full responsibility for being understood, everything about how you communicate changes. Because now you stop assuming people understand what you mean and start ensuring they do. The first common failure is vagueness. Most people communicate in abstractions and generalities when specificity is what actually creates understanding and action. "We need to improve performance," tells someone almost nothing useful. "We need to reduce our response time from 48 hours to 24 by end of next month," tells them exactly what's needed, measured how, and by when. Specificity creates clarity. Clarity creates action. Train yourself to be specific in every communication. When you're about to say soon, ask what soon actually means. When you're about to say better, ask better, measured how. The second failure is leading with context instead of conclusion. Most people structure their communication like a mystery novel. All the background before finally revealing the point. But human attention doesn't work that way. Lead with your conclusion. State your main point first, then provide the supporting information for those who want it. People engage more readily and retain more reliably when they know up front what they're supposed to take away. The third failure is not really listening, not waiting to understand, but waiting to speak, already formulating your response while the other person is still talking. Real listening requires being more interested in understanding than in being understood. It requires genuine curiosity about what's actually being communicated. Not just the surface content, but the emotional tone, the underlying concern. When people feel truly listened to, they become more open, more honest, more willing to collaborate. Practice active listening by giving the speaker your undivided attention, asking genuine, clarifying questions, and briefly summarizing what you understood before sharing your own perspective. The fourth failure is poor emotional calibration, communicating the same way regardless of who you're talking to or what state they're in. Delivering information when someone needs empathy, problem solving when someone needs to feel heard. The most effective communicators read the emotional landscape first. What does this person actually need right now? The fifth failure is hiding behind complexity. Complicated language rarely signals intelligence. It usually signals unclear thinking. If you can't explain something simply, you don't yet understand it clearly enough. Use the simplest word that accurately conveys your meaning. Remove every word that doesn't earn its place. Complexity is easy. Clarity is work. Do the work. The sixth and most consequential failure is avoiding difficult conversations. Most relationship failures and organizational dysfunction trace back to conversations that needed to happen and didn't. Difficult conversations aren't difficult because the content is complicated. They're difficult because they activate our fear of rejection and our discomfort with tension. Address behavior and impact, not character. Create genuine two-way space. The goal is mutual understanding, not delivering a verdict. And do it sooner rather than later. What might have been an uncomfortable 10-minute conversation in week 1 becomes a painful confrontation in month 6. The life you want lives on the other side of the conversations you've been avoiding. Say what you mean what you say it clearly, say it kindly, say it now. Chapter 13. Money is a tool, not a goal. Let's talk about money honestly, the way most people never do. Not the polished, sanitized version where everyone pretends they're completely rational about finances. The real version. The one where money carries emotional weight that has almost nothing to do with numbers. Where how you feel about money was shaped before you were old enough to understand what money actually is. Where your financial behavior today is driven by beliefs absorbed in childhood that you've never once consciously examined. The foundational shift is this: money is not a goal. Money is a tool. What it builds, the freedom, the security, the options, the capacity to be generous, the ability to create, those are the goals. Money itself is neutral. It amplifies whatever you already are. If you're generous, it makes you more generous. If you're anxious, it makes you more anxious. If you're clear about your values, it becomes a powerful instrument for living them fully. Get clear on what money is actually for in your specific life. Not financial security as a vague abstraction, but what that security specifically looks like, what it enables, what it protects. The core principle of building genuine financial stability is almost embarrassingly straightforward. Spend less than you earn and consistently invest the difference. That's the engine. Everything else is refinement. Yet most people violate this principle not because they don't know it, but because lifestyle inflation silently devours every income increase before it can become wealth. The antidote? Pay yourself first. Before you fund your lifestyle, automate a transfer to savings and investment. Make it non-negotiable, invisible, and consistent. Most people save what's left after spending. The financially intentional save before spending and live on what remains. That sequence reversal, compounded over decades, creates entirely different financial realities. Invest in yourself before almost anything else. The highest returning investment available to most people isn't in the financial markets. It's in developing skills and capabilities that increase earning potential. A skill that grows your income by even 10% annually compounds into something extraordinary over a career. Don't attempt to get rich quickly. Every shortcut in finance is a long cut dressed in exciting clothing. Consistency matters more than sophistication. And finally, don't let money stress consume the life you're trying to fund. Money is the tool. The life is the point. Keep that hierarchy clear in every financial decision you make. Chapter 14. Your health is your wealth. Imagine achieving everything you've been working toward: the career, the financial security, the meaningful relationships, the life been building, and then not having the physical vitality to enjoy any of it. Not because of bad luck or unavoidable circumstance, but because of choices made gradually, invisibly, across years of treating your body as an afterthought rather than a foundation. For millions of people, this isn't a hypothetical. It's their reality. Your health is not one priority among many. It is the foundation beneath every other priority. The remarkable truth is that the vast majority of conditions that devastate people in their later decades are not random misfortune. They are the accumulated consequence of daily choices made across years. Which means you have far more influence over your long-term health outcomes than the healthcare system typically suggests. Profound influence exercised through the unglamorous consistency of daily choices. The fundamentals are not complicated. Sleep is when your body repairs, your brain consolidates, your immune system strengthens. 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night is not a luxury. It is a biological requirement for optimal functioning. Protect it with the same seriousness you protect your most important commitments. Movement is medicine. Your body was designed to move and begins to deteriorate meaningfully when it doesn't. Find forms of movement you genuinely enjoy, because the best exercise is the one you'll actually do consistently across years, not just the one that looks most impressive for 3 weeks. Nutrition doesn't require a complicated protocol. Eat real food, the kind your great-grandparents would recognize. Minimize processed products masquerading as food. The 80-20 rule applies here too. Eat with genuine intention 80% of the time, and the other 20% won't derail you. Stress management is the pillar most people ignore until it's causing visible damage. Chronic stress is physiologically destructive, contributing to cardiovascular disease, immune dysfunction, and cognitive decline. Develop genuine stress management practices as a non-negotiable daily priority, not as a luxury when life slows down. Investing in your health is the most strategically sound investment you can make. Every dollar spent on quality food, consistent movement, and preventive care returns multiples in energy, productivity, clarity, and years of vibrant living. The time to make that investment is now, in the ordinary, unremarkable days when health feels like background noise rather than urgent priority. Because the version of you that shows up fully for the life you're building, with genuine energy, genuine presence, genuine vitality, is built in those ordinary days, one consistent choice at a time. Take care of the foundation. Everything built on it will thank you. Chapter 15. Consistency beats intensity every time. We live in a world that worships intensity. We celebrate the person who works until midnight, the athlete who trains until they can't stand, the entrepreneur who sacrifices everything on the altar of ambition. We share their stories, admire their dedication, and tell ourselves that's what it looks like to really want something. But here's what those stories almost never show you: the quiet, unglamorous, unremarkable consistency that preceded and sustained every extraordinary result you've ever admired. The overnight success that took 12 years. The athletic mastery built through thousands of training sessions nobody filmed. The financial freedom that resulted from the same modest investment made every single month for 2 decades without drama or deviation. Intensity gets attention. Consistency gets results. And in the long run, the only run that truly matters, consistency wins every single time. Intensity is inherently unsustainable. It burns bright and burns out. It depends on motivation, on peak emotional states, on circumstances aligning just right. And motivation fluctuates. It responds to sleep quality, stress levels, recent wins and losses. You cannot build a reliable life on an unreliable fuel source. Consistency, on the other hand, is independent of motivation. When consistency becomes identity, when showing up is simply what you do, as automatic and non-negotiable as breathing, you no longer need to feel motivated to execute. The behavior happens regardless of the emotional weather. And it is this weather-independent execution, compounded across months and years, that produces the results which look extraordinary from the outside, while feeling like ordinary discipline from the inside. The secret to genuine consistency is to anchor it to something smaller than you think you need. Most people set standards based on their best days. An hour of exercise, 1,000 words written, 30 minutes of meditation. When a hard day arrives and the standard feels impossible, they skip entirely. And skipping once makes skipping twice easier, and a pattern begins to form in the wrong direction. Design your consistency floor around your worst days, not your best ones. What is the absolute minimum you can do to maintain the identity and keep the chain unbroken? 5 minutes of movement, 1 paragraph written, 3 intentional breaths. On your hardest days, that minimum is enough. Because the goal on hard days isn't excellence, it's continuity. It's keeping the thread unbroken so that when easier days return, you haven't lost the pattern you worked so hard to build. Never miss twice. Missing once is human. Missing twice is the beginning of a new habit, and not the one you want. When you miss, your only job is to make tomorrow non-negotiable. Not perfect, just present. Track your consistency visibly. There is something quietly powerful about a physical record of your own follow-through. A growing reluctance to break the chain, a deepening sense of yourself as someone who actually follows through on what they commit to. Celebrate the process, not just the results. The ability to find genuine satisfaction in showing up, in the practice itself, independent of visible progress, is something most people never access. It is the ability to be successful right now, in this ordinary day of ordinary effort. And now, here is where everything comes full circle. 20 lessons, 20 frameworks, 20 invitations to see yourself and your life differently than you did when you first pressed play. But none of this matters if it stays in your head. The gap between knowing and doing, the same gap we named at the very beginning of this journey, is the only gap that has ever truly separated the life you have from the life you're capable of living. Knowledge without action is just entertainment. These lessons only become real the moment you choose to apply one of them. Not all 20. One. Today. So choose one. The chapter that hit you hardest. The lesson that felt most uncomfortably relevant. The principle you've been nodding along to for years without ever fully implementing it. Start there. Not Monday, not when life settles down, not when you feel ready or more certain or less afraid. Now. Because the version of you that's possible, the one with the clarity, the discipline, the relationships, the health, the financial stability, the inner peace you've been working toward, that version is not waiting for a perfect moment. That version is being constructed, one small repeated decision at a time, in the exact life you're already living. You already know what you need to do. The question was never about information. It was always about commitment. And commitment doesn't require certainty. It doesn't require confidence. It doesn't even require feeling ready. It only requires the decision, made right now, in this ordinary moment, to become the person you've always known you were capable of being. That decision is yours. It has always been yours. And everything, truly everything, changes the moment you make it. If this audiobook served you, share it with someone who needs it most. Keep going. We'll see you at the next level. This is Elite Success Audiobooks.